There is a silent saboteur sitting right now in your kitchen pantry, disguised as your favorite childhood comfort food. But what if I told you that this deeply beloved, innocent-looking food is secretly waging a quiet war against your body the moment you cross the threshold of 60 years old? My name is Dr. Daniel Reed, and today we need to have a serious, honest, and perhaps surprising conversation about peanut butter. However, we must face the undeniable reality of human aging. As our bodies mature and change, the way our internal systems process, break down, and tolerate certain foods changes right along with them. A snack that was perfectly safe and remarkably healthy for you at the age of 30 or 40 can silently transform into a hidden daily hazard at 65, 70, and beyond. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain and unpack exactly when, why, and how peanut butter becomes genuinely dangerous for older adults. But do not worry. My goal is never to take away the foods you love. By the end of our time together today, I am going to give you the exact knowledge and the specific steps you need to protect yourself, ensuring you never have to give up this beloved flavor completely. Let us begin with a very immediate, very physical danger that almost nobody in the medical community likes to talk about, yet it is incredibly common in older adults. As we get older, a very subtle, gradual shift happens inside our throats. The intricate, complex network of muscles that we use to swallow naturally begins to lose a slight bit of their youthful strength, their rapid reaction time, and their tight coordination. At the exact same time this muscle shift is happening, our mouths often begin to naturally produce significantly less saliva. But very often, this chronic dry mouth is a direct, unavoidable side effect of the daily medications you rely on to stay healthy, such as blood pressure prescriptions, daily allergy medicines, or water pills. Now, I want you to think carefully about the physical texture and the unique consistency of peanut butter. It is incredibly thick, remarkably heavy, and famously sticky. When you take a large, dry spoonful of it and place it into a mouth that already lacks adequate saliva, and then you try to force that heavy mass down a throat that simply doesn't have the robust muscle power it used to, you are instantly creating a recipe for a truly terrifying, life-threatening situation. It clings stubbornly to the roof of your mouth, it thickly coats the back of your throat, and in severe, frightening cases, it can block your airway completely. Countless older adults have found themselves suddenly gasping for air, panicking alone in their kitchens after taking a bite of a simple, hastily made afternoon sandwich. To avoid this terrifying scenario entirely, the golden rule for seniors is incredibly simple but non-negotiable. You must never, ever eat peanut butter straight off the spoon, and you must never eat it alone without moisture. If you are going to enjoy it, its physical structure needs to be fundamentally altered and thinned out. Heat it up. Stir it vigorously into a warm bowl of hot morning oatmeal, where the heat can naturally melt it down into a safe liquid. Blend it. Mix it into a morning fruit smoothie, where the surrounding milk or water completely neutralizes the dangerous stickiness. Spread it thin. If you are putting it on toast, you must spread it paper thin. And always, without fail, have a tall glass of water, milk, or hot tea right next to your plate to wash it down safely and completely. We need to look closely at what happens once that heavy spread actually makes its way inside your complex digestive system. The peanut butter looks perfectly smooth, totally solid, and completely uniform in texture, from the very top of the jar to the very bottom. Peanuts, by their very nature, are completely full of rich, liquid oil. In the natural world, if you grind up peanuts, that oil always, inevitably separates from the solid crushed nuts and floats right to the top of the container. To stop this natural separation from happening on grocery store shelves, food manufacturers rely on a heavy chemical process. They take cheap, mass-produced vegetable oils and they forcefully inject hydrogen gas into them, which chemically forces the liquid oil to turn into a hard solid at room temperature. These are known as hydrogenated oils, but for an aging, sensitive human body, consuming these artificial, chemically altered fats is nothing short of a biological disaster. Your older body doesn't actually recognize these chemically altered, plastic-like fats as real food. It simply does not have the tools to break them down cleanly. But for a senior whose heart is already working diligently every single second to pump blood through naturally older, stiffer vessels, eating this type of commercial, highly processed peanut butter every single day is exactly like forcing your heart to run a brutal marathon through waist-deep mud. It creates an enormous, silent cardiovascular strain that you simply cannot feel until it is often too late. The sweet deception and joint pain. And unfortunately, it is not just the fake, plastic-like fats hiding inside that familiar commercial jar. It is the massive amounts of hidden sugar. But major commercial brands secretly, quietly load their peanut butter formulas with massive, overwhelming amounts of added, highly refined sugars. They do this for one specific reason: to make the product highly addictive and to artificially force your brain's reward center to crave it again and again. Instead, you will see clever disguise words meant to trick you, words like molasses, cane juice, evaporated cane syrup, or the notorious high-fructose corn syrup. If you are a senior who is currently struggling with stiff, creaky knees, aching finger joints that make opening jars difficult, or a lower back that fiercely and painfully protests every single time you try to stand up from your favorite living room chair, this hidden sugar is your absolute worst enemy. When you eat refined, hidden sugar, it triggers a rapid, violent, and unnatural spike in your blood sugar levels. Your aging body panics at this sudden surge and responds by releasing a massive, overwhelming flood of inflammatory messengers directly into your bloodstream. Imagine that your aging, sensitive joints are like a small, quiet, smoldering campfire. You might naturally have a little bit of mild arthritis, a little bit of expected wear and tear from a long, incredibly well-lived life. Eating a heavy, sweet, sticky spoonful of sugary commercial peanut butter is exactly like taking a large cup of highly flammable gasoline and pouring it directly onto those hot embers. The inflammation flares up instantly and violently. You might wake up the very next morning feeling incredibly stiff, sore, and miserable, immediately blaming it on the damp, rainy weather outside, or just chalking it up with a sigh to getting older. You are completely unaware that your harmless-looking afternoon peanut butter snack was the actual, direct culprit of your pain. Our bodies, once they cross the threshold of 60, become incredibly sensitive and highly reactive to these hidden inflammatory triggers. We simply lose the rapid bounce-back recovery systems that used to protect us in our youth. Speaking of inflammation, we need to take an even closer look at the peanuts themselves. Even if you are incredibly careful, incredibly diligent, and you buy perfectly pure, completely no sugar added, natural peanut butter, you are still consuming a massive, highly concentrated amount of something called omega-6 fatty acids. Our human bodies absolutely need a small amount of omega-6s to survive and function properly. But human health, especially senior health, is entirely, 100% about delicate balance. Think of your body's complex internal inflammatory system as a classic playground seesaw. On one side of the seesaw, sitting quietly, you have omega-3s. These are the wonderful, calming, deeply soothing anti-inflammatory fats that you naturally find in wild-caught salmon, crunchy walnuts, and tiny flax seeds. On the exact opposite side of that playground seesaw, you have the omega-6s. These fats naturally promote and trigger inflammation to help your body heal from sudden acute injuries, like a cut or a scrape. In a perfectly healthy, perfectly balanced human body, this seesaw sits perfectly level, parallel to the ground. But our modern, everyday diets are overwhelmingly heavy in omega-6s, and peanuts happen to be absolutely incredibly loaded with them. If you are eating peanut butter every single day as a snack or breakfast staple, you are constantly dumping heavy iron weights onto the omega-6 side of your internal seesaw. Your body is forcefully pushed into a constant, exhausting, low-grade state of high alert. This systemic, whole-body inflammation doesn't just make your joints throb and ache. It puts a constant, wearing stress on your delicate immune system. It chronically irritates the fragile lining of your blood vessels and it silently, relentlessly drains your daily energy levels, leaving you feeling heavy and fatigued all afternoon for no obvious reason. If you are going to continue to eat peanut butter in your senior years, you must actively and consciously work every single day to balance that seesaw. That means if you decide to have a spoonful of peanut butter on your morning toast, you need to make a deliberate, conscious effort to drastically increase your intake of soothing, cooling omega-3s later that exact same day. You might do this by having a nice piece of baked fish for your dinner, or by generously sprinkling chia seeds over your lunchtime salad. Now, we must transition to bring your attention to perhaps the most insidious, hidden danger lurking in that jar of peanut butter, something you absolutely cannot see with your eyes, you cannot smell with your nose, and you certainly cannot taste on your tongue. It is a highly toxic, naturally occurring compound known to scientists as aflatoxin. This specific, damp underground environment happens to be the absolute perfect, prime breeding ground for a certain type of aggressive natural mold. As this invisible mold grows on the highly porous, soft peanut shells underground, it naturally produces a highly toxic chemical byproduct. This toxic byproduct is the aflatoxin. Even after the peanut farmers harvest the crop, even after the peanuts are heavily roasted at extreme, blistering high temperatures, and even after they are violently ground down into a perfectly smooth butter, microscopic, stubborn traces of this dangerous mold toxin can absolutely remain alive and present in the food. When you consume that peanut butter, the incredibly heavy, exhausting burden of filtering that specific mold toxin completely out of your blood falls entirely onto one single organ: your liver. Your liver is your body's master filtration plant, working a grueling 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to keep your bloodstream clean and pure. But as we inevitably advance in age, the natural, vigorous blood flow to the liver slowly begins to decrease, and its remarkable ability to rapidly regenerate its cells and clean house slows down significantly. If you are habitually consuming hidden mold toxins in your daily peanut butter day after day, year after year, you are relentlessly forcing an aging, tired, overworked filter to process a very heavy, very toxic load. Over time, this constant, relentless chemical exposure is incredibly taxing and creates deep, damaging cellular stress inside the liver. To actively minimize this invisible, silent risk, many top senior health experts strongly recommend only choosing certified organic peanut butter. This is because organic farming practices often result in drastically healthier, more balanced soil and significantly lower overall mold counts. Alternatively, you can occasionally give your liver a break and swap out your peanut butter for fresh almond butter or sunflower seed butter. Because these alternatives grow on trees and tall stalks high above the damp ground, they naturally carry a drastically lower risk of harboring this specific soil-based mold. Let's carefully shift our focus downward to another absolutely vital organ system that works tirelessly for you every single second of every single day: your kidneys. As we navigate through our senior years, these delicate sieves naturally become a bit less efficient. The tiny mesh gets a little worn out and less precise. Now here is the critical connection. Peanuts contain an exceptionally high amount of a naturally occurring sharp compound called oxalates. For most young, highly active people, these oxalates simply pass harmlessly through the body and exit out through the urine without causing even a whisper of a fuss. But if your older kidneys are aging and naturally slowing down, or if you do not actively drink enough pure water throughout the day, these sharp oxalates can begin to slowly bind together and crystallize right inside your urinary tract. I want you to imagine tiny, microscopic, incredibly sharp grains of sand slowly clumping and binding together over weeks and months, eventually forming a hard, jagged, sharp pebble deep inside your body. Eating heavily concentrated, high oxalate foods, like heavy, daily amounts of dense peanut butter, while your body is simultaneously dehydrated, is the exact perfect storm for rapidly creating these agonizing, sharp stones. Furthermore, we must address another mineral element. Peanuts are exceptionally, unusually rich in potassium. But if your fragile kidneys are already slightly compromised, which is a very common, very often undiagnosed, and silent issue for millions of seniors, they cannot effectively or quickly filter out the excess, floating potassium from your blood. Too much potassium silently building up in your bloodstream can actually interfere directly with your heart's delicate, highly tuned electrical pacing system, leading to dangerous, frightening heart palpitations. Caution statement. Please remember, before making any sudden or drastic changes to your daily diet, especially if you have a known history of agonizing kidney stones or severe swallowing difficulties, it is always best and safest to consult directly with your personal physician. I also want to touch briefly on exactly how commercial mass-market peanuts are grown, because this process matters deeply to the health and longevity of your senior body. Because they are forced to grow deep underground in the dirt, peanuts have a very soft, highly spongy, incredibly porous outer shell. Conventional, cheap, mass-market peanut farming relies incredibly heavily on dousing the earth with harsh chemical pesticides, aggressive weed-killing herbicides, and harsh synthetic fertilizers just to artificially maximize their crop yields and their profits. These harsh, man-made chemicals seep right through that soft, spongy, vulnerable shell and soak directly into the actual meat of the peanut itself. When millions of those chemically soaked peanuts are harvested, transported, and ground up into your favorite familiar spread, those exact chemical residues go right into the plastic jar, and then right into your mouth. Again, we must face facts. An older body simply does not have the robust, aggressive, highly efficient detoxification pathways that it once proudly possessed. Our older, more fragile cells are vastly more vulnerable to taking damage from these synthetic chemical stressors. For an aging body, actively avoiding those harsh chemical pesticides is a direct, absolutely mandatory investment in your long-term cellular health and your daily comfort. The heavy anchor in your stomach. Next, we absolutely must talk about the sheer physical mechanics of digestion. I want you to pause and think about how a heavy, dense, incredibly sticky spoonful of peanut butter physically feels when it finally lands at the bottom of your stomach. As we age, our stomachs naturally begin to produce less powerful digestive acid, and the natural muscular contractions of our entire intestinal tract, the steady rhythmic waves that physically push and move our food along, start to slow down significantly and lose their power. Peanut butter is incredibly, notoriously dense in both heavy calories and heavy complex fats. If you decide to eat a large, heavy serving of peanut butter late in the afternoon, or worse, if you use it as an evening snack while sitting and watching your favorite television shows, it is going to drop and sit in your stomach exactly like a solid lead weight. You might easily find yourself waking up abruptly at 2 in the morning with a frightening, burning, tight sensation in the middle of your chest, tossing and turning in the dark, never once realizing that the simple, harmless-looking peanut butter you casually ate on a cracker at 7 o'clock is still sitting right there, heavily struggling to be digested. The safe path forward. So, with all of these hidden, profound, and multifaceted dangers laid bare, the terrifying, airway-blocking choking hazards, the artery-stiffening fake industrial fats, the joint-inflaming hidden sugars, the exhausting omega-6 imbalance, the invisible liver-taxing mold toxins, the sharp, agonizing kidney stones, the soaked-in chemical pesticides, and the exhausting, sleep-stealing digestive strain. Does this mean you have to angrily march into your kitchen right now and throw your beloved jar of peanut butter directly in the trash? No, absolutely not. You simply need to fundamentally, radically change how you buy it, how you safely store it, and exactly how you eat it. Let's start right at the grocery store. When you walk your cart down the peanut butter aisle, you are going to be immediately bombarded with loud, bright, aggressive marketing lies. You will see brightly colored plastic jars proudly proclaiming reassuring things like all natural, no stir, reduced fat, or heart healthy. The absolutely perfect, completely safe jar of peanut butter for a sensitive senior body should have exactly one single ingredient printed on that back label: peanuts. When you finally buy this pure, pristine, unadulterated peanut butter, you will immediately notice that the natural peanut oil has completely separated from the solids and is sitting in a clear, liquid pool right at the top of the jar. Do not be put off or disgusted by this sight. This is actually a beautiful, wonderful, highly encouraging thing. It is pure visual proof that the manufacturer has not secretly pumped your food full of artificial, artery-clogging, hydrogenated chemicals just to make it look pretty and solid on the store shelf. When you get that pure, single-ingredient jar home to your kitchen, you are going to have to do a little bit of manual labor. You need to take a strong, sturdy butter knife, carefully poke it all the way down to the bottom of the glass, and slowly, patiently, carefully stir that floating liquid oil right back into the solid crushed nuts. And here is the absolute most crucial step, the one step that almost everyone seems to get wrong. Once you have successfully stirred it together, you must immediately put the jar directly into the refrigerator. Do not, under any circumstances, put it back in the warm, dark pantry. Storing natural, pure, living peanut butter in the crisp, cold environment of your fridge does two incredibly important, life-saving things for your senior health. First, the cold air naturally and safely firms up the peanut butter, bringing it to a perfect, easily spreadable consistency without the natural oil ever separating or pooling at the top again. But far more importantly than that, the cold temperature drastically and effectively slows down the natural oxidation and breakdown of the fats, preventing the peanut butter from turning rancid and spoiling. It also completely, definitively stalls the growth of any microscopic, residual mold spores, keeping your dangerous aflatoxin risk as absolutely close to zero as naturally possible. Your warm, room-temperature pantry might be perfectly fine for the chemically preserved, plastic fat peanut butter of the past, but real, living, natural food belongs in the cold. Now, let's talk about the exact mechanics of how you are actually going to eat it safely from now on. Portion control is absolutely undeniably vital, more now than at any other point in your entire life. A standard, medically recognized, safe serving of peanut butter is exactly 2 tablespoons. Most of us just grab a large spoon from the drawer and heavily scoop until it looks right to our eyes, very often ending up with 3, 4, or even 5 massive tablespoons in a single quick sitting. That huge amount equals hundreds and hundreds of dense, heavy calories, a massive, physically overwhelming load of difficult-to-digest fats, and a huge, fiery, dangerous spike in those inflammatory omega-6s I warned you about. You need to completely, mentally reframe exactly how you view and use this food. Start treating peanut butter like a rich, decadent seasoning, a powerful flavor enhancer, rather than treating it as a main course or a primary source of heavy protein. Measure out exactly 1 single, flat, level tablespoon. I want you to start exclusively mixing that single tablespoon into other wet, moisture-rich foods. Doing this completely eliminates the terrifying physical choking hazard and safely dilutes the heavy fat density for your stomach. Stir that single, measured tablespoon deep into a cool bowl of plain, unsweetened Greek yogurt. The natural, soothing moisture in the yogurt completely takes away the sticky, cement-like danger, while the healthy, powerful probiotics living in the yogurt actually step in and assist your aging gut bacteria in breaking down the heavy peanut fats much more efficiently. Or throw a spoonful right into a blender for a morning smoothie with a handful of fresh green spinach, half of a ripe banana, and some cool, unsweetened almond milk. The liquid makes the entire mixture perfectly, wonderfully safe for your throat to easily swallow, and you still get to fully enjoy that wonderful, deeply comforting, roasted peanut flavor that you have loved since childhood. You also need to become highly strategic and strict about the clock on the wall. Because peanut butter is so incredibly heavy and literally takes so many long hours for your stomach to break down, it should strictly, without exception, be a morning or early midday food. Having it for breakfast, perhaps warmly melted over a steaming bowl of oatmeal, provides a slow, steady, continuous dripping release of reliable energy that will keep your blood sugar perfectly, beautifully stable throughout the entire morning. If you eat it early in the day, your body has the entire afternoon while you are upright, happily walking, and actively moving around, to properly process those complex fats and effectively utilize the energy they provide. You should make it a hard, unbreakable rule in your house to never, ever eat peanut butter within 3 to 4 hours of going to bed. Your aging, hard-working digestive system simply needs to peacefully rest and repair itself at night, not be forced to work a strenuous, miserable overtime shift trying to aggressively break down a heavy, stubborn lump of oil while you are lying flat on your back in the dark. Ultimately, protecting your precious health and maintaining your vibrant vitality as you get older isn't about miserable restriction. You simply can no longer casually feed it the exact same way you did when you were a carefree 25-year-old. The robust, indestructible, roaring furnace of your youth has naturally, beautifully transitioned into a finely tuned, highly sensitive, classic engine. Carelessly pouring the wrong, cheap fuel into that delicate engine, like heavily processed, sugar-laden, chemically hydrogenated, mold-risky commercial peanut butter, is inevitably, unavoidably, going to cause painful breakdowns in your aging joints, unnecessary strain on your faithful heart, and miserable disruptions in your digestion. But taking the extra few minutes of your time to actively seek out pure, one-ingredient organic peanut butter, taking the patient time to manually stir the oil back in, storing it correctly in the cold environment of your refrigerator, and eating it mindfully in small, safe, perfectly measured portions. That is not a burden or a chore. That is an act of deep, profound, beautiful respect for your own body and a fierce defense of your future independence. If you found this vital information valuable, and you want to continue learning exactly how to protect your body and truly thrive in your later years, please make sure to subscribe to Senior Health Session right now. Leave a comment down below with the word peanut so I know that you made it all the way to the end of this incredibly important message. Stay tuned, because in our very next video, we are going to pull back the curtain and uncover the startling, hidden truth about your morning cup of coffee and what it is really doing to your aging, fragile bones. Until then, please take wonderful care of yourselves and remember to always eat smart.